All right, good evening, everyone. This is a public meeting of the Portland Committee on Community Engaged Policing, Community Engagement Subcommittee. It is July 10th, 2024. And to get us started, I will pass it over to Tia.
Okay, great. Hello, everyone tonight. Thank you so much for coming. And I would like to start off by doing introductions, and I'll start with PCCEP members. And since I'm talking now, I'll go. My name is Tia Palafox. My pronouns are she, her. I've been a member of PCCEP since 2021, and I'm currently the co-chair of the Community Engagement Subcommittee. Next PCCEP member, Carrie.
Thanks, Tia. Hi, my name's Carrie Driver. I am a PCCEP member since last year, and I am a member of the Community Engagement Subcommittee. I'll pass it to Odelia.
Awesome. Can you all hear like a really loud air conditioning? Oh, great. Okay. My name is Odelia Zuckerman. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a youth member. And the co-chair of the Community Engagement Subcommittee. I will pass it to Ashley.
Delia, yep, Ashley Schofield. I use she, her pronouns. I've been on PCCEP since August 2022, so coming up to 2 years. And I serve as currently the co-chair of the full PCCEP committee.
Okay.
I see Kip and Leslie, but
okay.
Maybe whoever wants to go.
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I'm Leslie Martinez. I'm a PCCEP member of the Community Engagement Subcommittee. My pronouns are she, hers. Thank you.
Hi there, Kip Silverman, pronouns are he, him. I am co-chair of the Settlement and Policy Subcommittee. And I am looking down through the, I just lost my entire thing. I'm working off my mobile. Can somebody tell me if we have other folks on the line from PCCEP?
Sure.
I think that's all the PCCEP members here at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah.
So if the city folks would like to introduce themselves, and anyone else from the DOJ or city or staff would like to go next.
Yeah, I'm Dory Grabinski, PCCEP project manager.
Mary Claire Buckley, Portland Police Bureau. Thanks.
Hi, folks. Stephanie Howard, she, her pronouns. I work in the mayor's office.
I am Samir Kanal. I am the Advisory Boards and Commissions Manager for the Community Safety Division.
Trisha Kepler, Accessibility Analyst for the Portland Police Bureau.
Thank you so much for being here tonight. And anyone else from the community, can you please introduce yourselves in the chat?
I'd like to introduce myself.
Yes.
Community. Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. You're still on people. Okay.
Yes. Community members can feel free to introduce themselves in the chat. Thank you. All right.
Okay, I'm going to go to the community agreements. Would anyone like to read them out loud, or I can do that? I will move forward with the community agreements. In this meeting and all of our PCCEP meetings, we listen actively and respectfully, share airtime, be present and open to new information and perspectives, assume positive intent, respect each other, respect the group, speak your own truth, communicate directly, honestly, and respectfully, ask questions to clarify, call out bias, be okay with ambiguity. The overview of today's meeting will be doing updates here to begin with. Then we'll review the mayor's response to the PSR recommendation. We'll have the debrief of the brain injury forum that we had on June 26th. And then we're going to talk about a check-in on all of the PCEP's priorities and work on that for the rest of the night. And then open public comment. Thank you so much. Updates. Adelia.
Yeah, so, there we go. So, just an update on the codification process. The work group had our final meeting. I don't even remember if it was yesterday or the day before. But yeah, we basically feel pretty good to go and vote on, hopefully vote on next meeting on the 17th. But just some updates and like decisions and kind of an explanation around decisions is, we're kind of sticking with a lot of what was initially proposed. So we're gonna plan to just advise the mayor, not change the quorum and not mandate council appearances, but a lot of this was tied up to like what can legally be put into code. And so the plan is to like keep having these conversations and hopefully be able to work those things into the PCEP plan, which we'll talk about later, like our plans around how and when we're gonna approach that. But that's a process that kind of has to go through DOJ approval. So there's lots, but we're excited to keep working on this and the plan. So yeah, if I missed anything, Ashley or Leslie or Dory or anyone who's, please chime in. Yeah.
No, that was really great. Yeah, so we just the work group met again just to kind of confirm what we had heard from our last meeting. And like Adelia said, we're gonna move forward with the language we had already talked about. And that, I also just wanted to add again that a lot of the functions and structure and how PCEP does things are put in the plan, and that too needs to be looked at. So that's definitely like I started to think of it as like the second phase of the codification. Well, codification has its own process for sure. Like we have to go, we have to get hopefully get the approval of the mayor, who will then champion it, and then council has to go to council for vote. So there's like definitely gonna be a process there. But on the other track is updating the plan, where we can add some things and we can maybe add our strategy, like our structure, like, okay, we're going to go to council when there's big recommendations. We're going to make that part of our strategy. So yeah, more to come, and looking forward to moving this forward next week at the pool committee meeting next week.
Yeah. Yeah. And for the plan, like we also recognize that we can't just like put all of our eggs in that basket and expect everything to work. So like there's still a lot to be done around that, and we're hopeful that like the changes we have kind of talked through and want to use to like build community and relationships with council members and stuff will hopefully come about. So we'll just see how that goes. Oh, and the draft documents are available for public review. Then they're on the website. So the draft recommendation and code and stuff can be viewed right now, I think. Yeah. Oh,
Go back one.
Okay. Adelia, do you want me to present?
yeah.
Good.
Stephanie, I know that you're here, and I think if you're able to, you'll probably be able to give a better summary of the mayor's letter in response to PSR if you're able to, but if not, we can probably do that.
It's up to you. I'm happy to help. Let me pull it up and get it in front of me.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and screen share that if that's, yeah, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so just so everyone's aware, PCCEP received a letter from the mayor in regards to the Portland Street Response recommendations. And yeah. Ready, Stephanie?
Sure. So I think, is this letter posted on the PCCEP website anywhere? Okay, perfect. Yeah, so folks can obviously take a look at that and read through that. I think to give a high level overview, the mayor's letter tries to walk through each of the recommendations and address them individually. At a high level, I think, what I would say is, I think the mayor really appreciated the feedback and the work that PCCEP did to collect input and make those recommendations. And I think there was a lot of alignment in what the mayor thinks is best to help PSR thrive and be a strong program, as well as what PCCEP recommended. So we want to start with recommendation number 1, which was the expansion of PSR to 24/7 operations. And I think, overall, I think the mayor is absolutely supportive of doing that. I know right now we've moved PSR into the public safety service area. So we're also in this transition. So the language is looking a little different, and that's going to be a learning curve for me. But they are now reporting in the structure that was previously the Community Safety Division. There are very active and productive conversations happening on getting the details of, say, like equipment that has previously been shared with fire, or processes or staff that overlapped, and working out the details in agreement with fire and Community Safety Division, or the public service area, public safety service area. So we're working on that agreement just to make sure that it's very clear how these programs will separate and maintain, as much functionality as possible. As soon as that's finished, I think we're really interested in trying to help PSR get staffed up, which is a central first step to getting to expanded operations. And I think they're desperately in need of that. So that's a top priority. And making sure that we're meeting the program's needs and that they've got the structures in place to expand, top priority. But I think at the end of the day, we are all in agreement, and the mayor was certainly in agreement that PSR is, something that should expand to 24/7. So that was a great recommendation. On to recommendation 2 with regard to funding. So what the mayor did was to add ongoing funding. He directed the city budget office to analyze what is the current funding that we have from funds that we knew were expiring, like ARPA or opioid settlement, and kind of plan out how we can spend those dollars and supplement that with city general fund dollars on an ongoing basis. And that's going to be analyzed every year. But really importantly, to make it clear that this is intended to be an ongoing funding source to make PSR a stable program within the city. There is a budget note here that is specifically directing Mike Myers and that team to work on expanding and creating sustainable funding for this, including, what once and for all, what do we need to do to get Medicaid funding? What do we need to do to get additional funds from the state or from other sources like Care Oregon? And there are lots of opportunities there. So those meetings are happening right now. I have one tomorrow, actually, to follow up. So these are really active meetings, and there's a lot of energy to go into that and create this as a stable, rated funding that will allow PSR to, not feel so uncertain about what their future looks like. I'll just say I see it in the chat. There's a question about what is a budget note. So a budget note is something that the mayor has added to his annual budget. And it is intended to give direction and to give intent behind how funding is established for any kind of, program that's within the budget. In this case, it was very intentionally and specifically meant to convey, hey, this is a program that's going to be around, and this is not a conversation we want to have every budget cycle on the uncertainty of this program. We want this to be figured out. So that's great. Okay, can we go back? All right. Administratively housing PSR and the community safety division. Check. The community safety division is a little bit different than it was when you guys made the recommendation because of our transition, but the community safety division is now the public safety service area. And so PSR has been is moving into the programs. I can't remember exactly the name of it because it's new to me, but it will report to the DCA Public Safety. It will not be a program that operates under fire. So it is now going to be an independent program, and the team that will be doing that are the same team that was at this community safety division. So we're really happy we can report that out and bring that program into a new space where they can operate a little bit more independently. All right, removing the restrictions on PSR staff, including collective bargaining processes. So this is a trickier issue, and I know that you all were very aware of that when you put this recommendation together. The city is obligated to honor all of its bargaining obligations under the law with every one of our labor partners, and so that includes the labor unions related to police. It includes the 2 labor unions that manage the staff at PSR. And as we've talked about, Ashley has raised this a couple of times really well. When PSR was created, a council of union representatives and city staff, as well as Portland Street Response folks, were intended to convene and draft out policies so that we can manage the scope and expand it and find solutions to allow this program to respond in the best way possible and to meet the needs of the community. And for quite a while, those conversations had stalled out. They resumed, in the last year, and I think are going to be resuming really well in earnest. I know leadership at the Police Bureau and with PSR, they've already been working and talking about what this can look like and how they can, decide to create a scope and an operation that can help PSR to, be used at its highest and best purpose and its maximum capacity. So those conversations are ongoing. I'm hoping that I can have an update for you on that in the next month or so. So that's again, there's a lot of energy around this right now. So I'm pleased with that progress, and I know the mayor was as well. All right. Okay, recusing PSR from law enforcement activities such as sweeps. So again, understanding that this, there are lots of different circumstances in which people who are experiencing a behavioral health crisis, they have different needs, and there are lots of, that can look lots of different ways. And I think this goes along with the conversations about the scope of the types of calls that PSR can respond to, and trying to develop those plans in a way that keeps, the community safe, that helps make sure that the staff at PSR are safe and operating in a way that they're comfortable operating. So all of that to say that I think the mayor's position here has been that this is really a decision that PSR should help inform for themselves as well. And, deciding where they think their services are best, are needed, and how to go about doing that is a decision that I think he feels is best made by PSR leadership themselves. So we, again, I think is relevant to many of the conversations that are happening. If they believe that there's an opportunity for them to be involved, if there is a police situation, I think the mayor feels most comfortable having those subject matter experts decide what is the best place, and I mean PSR by that, to decide where they can be most effective. All right, yes. So recommendation 6, inviting the independent monitor to consider success metrics when evaluating compliance with the settlement agreement. We're, as you know, I think the mayor and the team at the city is really excited about our new independent monitor team, and we have a lot of energy and eagerness to work with them on all of these things. And we're really excited because their team has some very specific experience with programs like PSR. So we are welcoming to, working with them, getting their advice, getting their input on how we can improve and strengthen this program. And so, we're very, very much open to working with them to determine how to make it successful. And then I think what we have here is just a closing paragraph there, which the mayor just wanted to be sure, and really recognize how much value your input and your work on this has brought. I've told him about, the numerous meetings that you all have had, the great turnout at your public forum, the really, really professional way that you all have collected that input and really worked together to synthesize it into this recommendation, and the mindfulness that went into this work to, try to create recommendations that were actionable. And he was so appreciative of that. I really can't say enough about how much he valued that work and how much that helped, him to inform steps that were being taken kind of as the recommendation was being developed, but also after it was received. So really, he as he says here, cannot always implement every single recommendation, but he really, really is glad to be able to report that there were many he could and agreed strongly with, and try to explain to the extent when he couldn't, but mostly wanted to be appreciative of all the work.
Thank you so much for that. Ashley, were you gonna ask a question?
Yeah, sure, if you don't mind. I don't know if we were gonna start doing that, but yeah, thanks, Stephanie, for running through that. I know we threw a lot of recommendations in there, so it was a lot to go through, and I appreciated the letter, and had also said to the full committee, that this was a good just a good process. And I think I don't want to call them wins. These are always incremental wins. But it just, this is just it's a good place to like, oh, look, this, what PCCEP is about, which is bringing, voices from the community and connecting them with police policy. Like, this was an example of that. And I'm glad the mayor recognized that. I think I'm going to redraw my question. I think you kind of answered it. So I look forward to, just seeing how this process goes, continues, and really look forward to the work group. Or actually, I know in the chat, there was a little conversation about, is it a work group or a council? And do you have any clarification on that?
That's my bad. I think I use the word council, and work group is the right word.
Okay,
Right phrase for that. And it's not as formal as that. It's a collaboration. I'll drop a link to that language in the chat also, so that people can see that. But yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Stephanie.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and I think just thinking back to however many months ago where we were like, what do we do about this? A lot of community members were really, really upset, and I think it's really great that we get to see this start to come to fruition, and it wouldn't be without all of that essentially unilateral community support and outpour of very strong reasons for why this is such a great program. And so, yeah, I'm excited to see what else comes from bargaining process, and yeah, but yay for PSR. Yeah.
Yeah, and you all did so much to help connect. I think so often there's a lot of community frustration about stuff that's going on. And then there sometimes is progress, but like people, it's not visible, right? And you all did so much to help connect the community to like being a part of what happened. And then also hopefully, I think it's already happening, but like you helped connected the community to the progress that was made here. And I think we'll continue hopefully to play out in this forum. It's just such a positive, way to use this space and just example of what you all can do. So yeah, really, really great work on that. Awesome. And I think that's a good transition into our next topic. So I think that's back to you, Odelia.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Okay. Yeah, so now we're kind of gonna talk about, just do a debrief of the forum on brain injuries, policing, and public safety. And so I think like just for PCCEP members who are able to attend, like maybe share out. I'm just gonna ask each question one by one and then share out like key relevant points, and then we'll talk about next steps in just a second. So first question is, what do you think went well? Yeah, Tia.
I'll get started. I was so excited to have the forum as a PCCEP member with a brain injury and know how important and passionate us in the brain injured community are about the topics. Any topic around brain injury and law enforcement is just so important. So I wanted to just start off by saying the most important thing to me that night was seeing the community engagement and how engaged community was at the forum. But I just really quick, I also want to say to those who might not have been there that there was about 45 to 60 people who came to the event, and we had 4 presenters that were really impactful. And I think it was an impactful night, a lot of engagement and some good awareness. And I have more details, but I'll let other people, I have other comments, but I'll let other people go ahead and I'll come back in.
Cool. Okay. Ashley, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, and answer the question, what went well? I think the execution went well of bringing it together. Big props to the staff and all the work and hours they put into all the background stuff that people don't understand when you put on an event. And I think, and maybe we'll get more into this, but the event was really well done and I learned so much. And I think others learned a lot, and I'm really glad we were able to record it, and that way we can share it, because I think there was some really great testimony in there that can help shape people's understanding of brain injury. And but I think like in the beginning, and I think we've talked about this before, just the like expectation of what we wanted, I think also kind of mismatched what actually happened. And I think what happened is something that like PCCEP, I think is in PCCEP's realm. I don't think it's outside of our priorities to engage and educate and inform the public and ourselves and PPB and our other partners. So, and I think that happened. I think when we were first initially starting this journey, I felt like we wanted a bigger scope. And so I think just maybe acknowledging that as we move forward about what kind of forums and events we put together, and balancing it with that this is an advisory board and that we're all volunteers and there's only so much that the bandwidth can go, because I know the staff did a lot of work to pull this together in a way that I don't think a lot of us understand. But with all that said, I think what really went well is like it was a great presentation, a great panel, great presenters. I think the goal was to have PPB as the audience and maybe on the panel, and I think that might have been the bigger dream. But I think as Fern had sent it in an email that we were talking in, just that there was a seed planted, right? And there's connections little made. And I think that's as much as we can honestly do sometimes, and that seed can grow and become bigger. And so, yeah, I also say that was what really went well. So great job, everybody. Great job, Tia.
Aw, and others, but thank you so much.
Yeah, Leslie.
Yeah, I definitely want to echo some of the comments on, you know, the organization was amazing. And as Ashley already mentioned, the content was great. I definitely felt like I learned a lot as well. I think the thing that I will add to this is I think the outreach was amazing. There were people at my table that heard about this event from the scanner, which isn't a typical you know, place that we pull from. So I think it was great that there are people coming into our space and learning things from us, or from the presenters that are outside of our immediate network and the people that we expect. So I thought that that was really great, and kudos to the team for that.
Aw, great.
Yeah. I mean, I was there too, so I guess I'll also answer the question. I think like it was great to hear kind of the ties of from like there was a lot of discussion of incarceration as well, and kind of the ties of like policing and incarceration and what police interactions look like when there's certain assumptions being made about people. And it was like I think just like really great to have discussions too with community members, because it's such an interesting setting that PCCEP doesn't usually operate in, like so different from this space. So that was cool too. But I think we can move on to the next question. Yeah, so Dory, for time, should I combine the both of 2 and 3?
Yeah, I think people kind of were speaking to lessons learned already a little bit, but I think Ashley and Leslie maybe, well, Ashley did. So yeah, I mean, I think maybe just considering all of the questions up here and sort of, yeah.
Yeah, so any lessons learned or themes that came up that could fit into other areas of the PCCEP's work? Any ideas? More thoughts?
Oh.
Yes, yeah.
So, well, I was wanting in regards to awareness, I wanted to say that I was writing it in a chat, but a lot of statistics were given and important information was given that I'll write in the chat. But that's more specific that I think was really important for everyone to hear. But also I think another great, what went well was the really good table discussions. And I have notes from tables on great detail of what stood out to people who were in attendance, and want to write up those ideas and some of the details that people still had questions about, and just some excitement around what could happen next, which we can go into in the next step section. But the table discussions was a really great part of the night, I think. So I wanted to include that. And I'll type out the rest of my things also.
Okay. Oh, sorry, just really quickly, I forgot to mention this, but right now we're just having this open to members of the committee, and then it'll be open later for community members. But I didn't mean to cut you off, Tia, if you had anything else to say.
I did have some lessons learned, and I won't go on and on, but one of the lessons I feel like for me, and as I was reading the notes from the tables, but there was a missing piece with the Portland Police Bureau training not really being part of the conversation, because one of the quotes was, "We need to understand the policies surrounding the training of officers about brain injury. There doesn't seem to be much information about how much and what kind of training there is. And what about officers who have a brain injury? Are they screened? So there was quite a bit of questions and notes about Portland Police training. And so I did gather that information, and maybe in next steps, somehow I can share some of that information. But it was a long night and maybe not enough time to cover all the Portland Police training information that I had gathered. So I feel like that was kind of just a misstep and some lessons learned.
Yeah, Ashley.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really good reflection, like, and how, you know, those table out breakouts were kind of a nice change. I think that's kind of a definitely a change from other ways we've conducted meetings. So that was a good lesson learned of like what we could do in the future for other kind of events if we ever forums ever did anything like this again. But I think just thinking about the question of I think the question was like theme into other ways, PCCEP, thank you. Could fit into other areas of PCCEP's work, yeah. I think it's really like, I think this topic is one of many under an umbrella that we've talked about many times, and other topics around police interactions with the public. You know, we did the work with a contact survey. We had a really great presentation and research done by Adam and Theo about Indigenous communities and their interaction with police. So just thinking like if we move forward, so maybe I'm approaching into like next steps, you know, how are we sort of giving, how are we, I think PCCEP, I feel like PCCEP's role is kind of that sitting in that umbrella part to create more traction and more seeds and maybe more information sharing. And, you know, that can lead us and inform us into a recommendation, right? That's kind of our strategy in PCCEP, is that these ideas come to our space, we talk about them, we work through, like, you know, we get buy-in from the public, we get, you know, we get feedback and input, and then we decide, oh, is this what we want to do, and move forward with a recommendation. So just, I think how, you know, I don't know if the brain injury is like, should be our sole topic. I guess I'm trying to say is like our topic should be around police interaction, and like us also includes like the stop data stuff. So I think this having and maybe we'll talk about that later in our 6 month, after we talk about like our 6 month priorities, how that plays into that. Cause I think there's a lot of stuff that we can carry on, but I don't think it's just one topic. I think it's an overall arching, and maybe it's, yeah, maybe it's working closer with TAC or something. I don't know. I think you top of my head. I don't even know if that's a plausible thing, but just we're training, where PCCEP is like, we're the forum that brings the community members together and engaged, and we can bring information. But in terms of like influencing the training, I think I guess I'm not understanding the gap. I think there's a little gap there. And so maybe we could talk about that more as we move forward with what police interactions and that topic overall, what we can do with it. You know, is it a recommendation? Is it more public sharing and stuff like that?
Yeah. Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that up, Ashley, because I think like what you said about like an umbrella kind of category of police interactions that aren't always great. It's like there's a huge issue, and it's also like important that we do talk about specifically how people with brain injuries are impacted, right? Because it's not like a monolith of experiences with how the police interact with you or choose to interact with you, but it is like, it's a very big topic that I think we kind of need to like consider reworking in that way, and like also with the stops data and who gets stopped and why and where, and like all of these different things, right? And so yeah, I think like that's a really good like potential way to reframe it. And we'll talk about it definitely in like the next section of like what next steps are and priorities are. And also, even if you weren't at the forum, other PCCEP members, if you have any thoughts, ideas, please share. But for next, like we're gonna do next steps in a sec. So yeah, Carrie.
Well, I was so sad to miss it and, felt disappointed that I wasn't able to participate for many reasons, but glad to hear that it went well. And I do think that it was really good for us to do a deep dive in a new way. That was obviously very passionate to several of our members and all of us as well, and throughout all these months of planning and stuff. And it sounds like we learned a lot about different ways to explore different demographics, different people, different topics in new ways that are specifically adjusted to those audiences. And I think that's pretty exciting. So that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. We missed you.
Yeah, any other last thoughts? Leslie or Kip, or no pressure though.
Or
I'm
Barb.
trying to find my unmute. I just wanted to echo what Carrie said. I was really sorry to have missed it, but I think it's important conversation, and I'm glad that you guys have some good takeaways from it, and also to help frame what we see missing from some of the conversations to talk about future agendas. So thank you for putting all your effort into it.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, I think that's that, and we can move on to talking about whatever we're gonna do in the next 6 months.
All right, I think we can move to the next item. Okay, so I think I'm taking over here for a little bit so all of our members can participate equally. So this item, it could have just as easily been in a full committee meeting, but it's summer, everything's a little crazy with our meeting schedule and our members, the availability of our members, so we are making it work. Oh, Tia, is your hand still up?
I was just going to number the third question was next steps, and then it was going into this section. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew next steps was going into this section.
Good, great
Okay.
point, thanks.
Thank you.
Yes, so yes, just acknowledging that this is certainly like a full committee discussion, and we'll follow up on it again later on. And so we're just kind of shifting things around and making things work with our summer schedule here. Yeah, so basically what we're gonna do is it's been around 6 months of PCCEP work since we did some committee project planning towards the end of December 2023. And we kind of want to go over, what we established back then, the priorities we laid out, what we've accomplished, what's still on the table, and then other ideas that have come up in the meantime. And then, yeah, just have a little bit of priority alignment. So, yep, taking inventory of that progress, see what our current pace is looking like, and checking in to see what is what we'd like to kind of prioritize for the next 6 months. So let's take a look here. All right, this slide, I'm just trying to give you a sense of the next couple slides that you will see. The next couple slides are from that December 2023 project planning that we did. So the first slide was an inventory of all the ideas that PCCEP had at that time. And then the next 3 slides were those ideas organized by priority level, based on, the discussion that PCCEP had in that session. I annotated those priorities with kind of status updates. And yeah, so let's get into that. All right, here were all of the ideas that were kind of in the ether back in December 2023. I'll just let you read these, and I'll pause here for a second. Because we'll read them again on the other slides here. Okay, and then let's go to the next slide. Okay, so here's what PCCEP identified as priority level 1. We had PCCEP codification, expansion and funding of PSR, and the future police accountability system, which people are familiar with the Police Accountability Commission. This was the code package that they worked on, and then has evolved into the city's revisions and the DOJ's review, etc. So status updates, as you heard earlier in the meeting, the committee work on codification is, well, kind of step 1 of that is set to close out next week. So that's really great. Again, talking about it in this very meeting, PCCEP did a substantial amount of community engagement and wrote a really great recommendation on PSR. I think the city action on that is, you know, I think there's a lot of positive momentum there. And then this third one here has actually kind of been on pause at a process level. That code package was under review by DOJ until last month. And that was actually, yes, I believe that the new text itself is available for public review now, and there is a community event about that code next Monday, the 15th. Is that right? It's next Monday. Cool.
That is correct. I'll drop a link in the chat.
Great. So PCCEP obviously hasn't really been able to engage too much here. You haven't had access to that text, and it's just been kind of under review with DOJ as far as we've been aware. So that's kind of maybe more of an active situation as of a few weeks ago. All right, moving on to priority level 2. So next slide. Okay, so we had the forum on brain injuries and law enforcement. And then this idea of kind of negotiating a new relationship between PCCEP and the monitor, and thinking about, I think the idea here was thinking about what future town halls might look like, and how the monitor would be assessing community needs and the community's view of the settlement agreement. So as you know, the brain injury forum was completed on 6/26. And the monitor situation, you know, I would say it's a similar situation to the future accountability system. Super recent development there. They are active as of July 1st. And so this is all kind of in process too, and is something that PCCEP could, I think, start thinking about picking up now, or maybe in the next few months. And then to the third one here. So these first 4, I don't believe there has been much movement on or much discussion about, except for the contact survey project. There was a desire to keep an eye on the city's implementation of that work group. Based on updates from our PCCEP rep, Carrie, they have met intermittently throughout 2024, and lately maybe not meeting as much. And then the last slide here of kind of taking inventory of things. I added a slide about new topics that have come up since that project planning discussion. These are things that PCCEP has either discussed in a meeting. Actually, I think they're all things PCCEP has discussed in a meeting. And or in the case of the brain injury forum are things that may be of interest in terms of next steps. So I'll read these. Indigenous interactions with police, PVB rapid response team, immigrant and refugee interactions with police, next steps on brain injury and policing work, and truth and reconciliation work. And I acknowledge I certainly may have missed a thing or two here. So there'll be space for you all to correct me on that. And then I'm just gonna go to the last slide here. All right. So the goal of this discussion, and we can go back to all these slides, of course. I think what we know, based on kind of the last 2 years or so, it seems like PCCEP is able to accomplish around 2 to 3 big community engagement events and maybe 2 to 3 recommendations every 6 months. So that's kind of what we're looking at. It doesn't mean I think we can only identify 2 to 3 priorities, but I think the way you did it last time in terms of like establishing tiers was really smart, because then it allowed space for like the ones that actually we couldn't end up moving on, right? And then the other thing here that I really want to stress is this isn't a conversation about work that we think is important. These things are all important, or ideas that we think are good. This is a discussion about you as a committee. Where are you as a group? What is their energy behind when it comes to moving work as a committee? And, would you yourself, meet with a work group or work on a recommendation or help plan an event? So that's kind of, I think, what I'm hoping we can think about when establishing these priorities. So that's my spiel. And yeah, so I see some hands. We could start with you, Tia.
Under anything else in the orange box, I was thinking one of the topics that we had been talking about since I started in 2021 was the houselessness community, along with the sex workers and the criminology around that. So I just wanted to verbalize that topic. And then I want to talk about next steps on brain injury and policing work. Well, all of them are so important, but I'm prepared for talking about some of the ideas I have for next steps with the forum that we just did. But I wanted to say that first. So I don't know if you want to add that and others should go, or should I talk about some of the ideas I have for the forum and keep moving forward here?
I think we'll keep this conversation a little more high level in terms of what the priorities are. And then if those priorities were to be established, we would drill down more into what that would look like. And if somebody has if like something is bubbling up and seems like it's emerging as like a top priority and the rest of the group has questions about what that would look like, then we can maybe talk about it more.
Okay, thank you.
Odelia?
Yeah, first, I definitely agree with you, Tia, that should be like kind of added to the list, or I don't know what we're calling this, but especially with like I'm talking about what you're talking about with houselessness, like the new Supreme Court ruling and like changes that are to come. And the new camping policies just started in Portland on the 1st, right? And so there's lots perhaps to change with like how homelessness now can be criminalized in different ways, and that will probably change. And that connects with police interactions too, but it's also somewhat different. It depends. But anyways, aside from that, I think the work on the rapid response team, I think, is a really big priority, especially because it's something that can be more preventative rather than reactive, although it is also reactive but yeah. And then I also think just from our conversations we had in the work group the other day around codification, I think pursuing those changes we want to make in the plan is important too. And something that maybe we should keep like riding that wave while it's already on our minds. So that's kind of where I'm at right now.
Carrie?
I also feel like the rapid response team is my new preferred priority for the rest of this year. And changing my previous priority slightly, human trafficking, it feels the houselessness issue is equally, if not more. I mean, they're all so important, but the houselessness issue feels less of a it feels like we can have more traction with human trafficking in our role, and it feels like it's a topic that yeah, we're really struggling with now, and it crosses many other topics that were on our list, so a few other.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm going to echo rapid response team engage or policies and keeping that conversation moving forward about what directives might have changed, how the constitutionality of the engagement, both past and going forward. There were some good questions brought up in our meeting with Chief Day that we should keep pursuing. I'm trying to still navigate the ideas of how we should have a discussion and in settlement and policy. Maybe it's a topic for beginning of August that we need to have with the recriminalization of small amounts of drugs, with the potential criminalization of trying to sleep. I think there are, and just some of the movement going in with the district attorney-elect from Multnomah County, there's a lot of new possibilities for very bad outcomes. And I think along with the rapid response team, these are things that I'm hoping will be front and center and see what we can discuss and influence to mitigate bad outcomes. So that's where my thinking has been. And also revisiting the reporting in conjunction with conversations to have with the new independent monitor. And I'll just reference like the STOPS data is something that has been on our agenda for a while to try to address, but with the new independent monitor, there might be a conversation there to be had first before we bring it up directly.
I just started taking some notes on the fly here. So sorry for my go ahead, Ashley.
Thank you. Yeah, so just sort of throwing in votes here, I guess. I think that the codification process actually still needs to be a priority because we have to get to council, we have to present to council, and that timeline can be can be kind of squirrely, probably, considering all the changes going on in the city right now, and this like goal to get we've done the first part. We got the recommendation out. We'll get the response from the mayor. That'll help us with the council vote. But we kind of want to get that all done by November, certainly by January. So just thinking like we're still gonna need some power around that. And we do a work group, so maybe that's just where it continues to stay and we keep having those, try bi-weekly meetings to keep on top of it. So I just want to put that in the bucket. And then I think the rapid response team I think it's something we've heard and it's something we've been chatting about. I'm not 100% sure what our role is in that, to be honest. And all these topics, I don't actually really understand PCCEP's role, including the interactions with houselessness. With those specific topics, where I think PCCEP more has the grasp or the influence is the interactions overall with police. And it's a conversation we started with the data stops, the stops data, which I think so I wanted to put that out there. I think stops data, that report, how do we decipher that for the community? How do we get input from the community? Like, I think that's still a gap. But I think it also can carry into these other topics like the brain injury information, the indigenous interactions and that I know that study was more about the media and the perception of, but the whole point is that what I took away was that police aren't caring about missing indigenous people. And this is a fact. Our country doesn't do that. And so I think, so there's that. And then the contact survey, which we've already sort of put in, but I think like so actually I want to stop and back up. So those are like the topics I think. So interactions with police and the PCCEP codification, moving that forward. But I also think that we should also sort of think about a realign on our process, our strategy. And I appreciate Dory sort of breaking it down that we, really PCCEP can only do 2 to 3 things in a year if, we're lucky and we have a pretty working committee. And not putting too much ahead of us. So I'm just thinking of like how we move forward with any of these topics. What does that look like? Like, what's the criteria for us taking up topics and moving forward into like a public space? So I'd love us to like maybe it's a retreat. I know Dory staff has talked about doing a retreat this summer. So I think that should be, I know it's not a topic priority, but I think that we need to kind of start there because we've learned a lot in the last year about our process and strategy. And I think we need to refine it a little bit more so that, and I think we're getting good at it, I think, but like, just as we move forward, our energy, where do we spend our precious energy, which we all have it, it's very limited. And then also I just wanted to add, I do feel like we're missing the community's input on this. And I think, they're here and they can have public comment and all that. But I'm just curious if there's another way for us to do a survey and, the resource, like the social media, we have like a link and a survey and we kind of lay out all these and ask those who are following PCCEP what they think. So I think we're missing that voice a little bit in what we move forward with sometimes. So I'll stop talking because I thought it was a lot, but thank you.
Right now we're still doing PCCEP discussion only on this. I think we've heard from everyone but Leslie so far. Leslie, do you have thoughts on your priorities?
I really don't have anything to contribute on this. I really, I agree that the Supreme Court decisions and everything that, is going to be affecting our houseless folks is going to be pretty critical. That's mostly where I would put some of my weight, and I'd be happy to contribute to that initiative. But overall, I think these are all really worthwhile causes, and I'm just happy to support wherever I can.
Great. So I'm gonna share the notes that I took. Okay, so, and let me get Leslie's. And Tia, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I have a comment question.
Mhm.
I know we talked about big PCEP events and time it takes to put on events, but I'm just wondering about like the Indigenous community and police interactions, as well as the brain injury community and police interactions. I really feel strongly about being able to follow up with people who come and present information that's just so critical to learn about what's happening, and would like to do something where we follow up. Whether it's small, can be small scale or some sort of follow-up event or follow-up activity. So I'm just wondering what kind of things can we do that's doable, that shows that we want to continue that engagement, even if it's not like a large event. Can we still follow up and engage and yes, just can we continue to follow up, do next steps, and engage with the folks that come in and share things that are happening in their community, and how can we help, like we hear them, and then after we hear them, I want to make sure that we continue to support them and continue to see what we can do to do some sort of action.
I think
But
that's exactly what this conversation is for. In my mind, because, you know, in any given meeting, just the breadth of topics on those slides that we went through, it is widespread. And the amount of things PCEP is not addressing that relate to policing, somewhat infinite. And so as a group with limited time and resources, we do have to establish those priorities and decide if there is capacity to do that and to follow up with all of those things and see if these are areas where there can be movement when it comes to PCEP, or you know, if some things are limited to single discussions, single events, etc. And that is in some ways the reality that we do grapple with. Yeah, Carrie, I saw your hand.
I'll reserve it for later. It was one of those thought bubbles that is more specific, less general. So
Kip, did you want to share that? Oh, Leslie, go ahead.
Yeah, I think maybe so a lot of these things are already kind of in the works. I think the houselessness is the only thing that is newer, like the RTT stuff we've been talking about. So I guess if my answer was more under the assumption that like those things were already things we were working on and we were just kind of adding new things to it. But if that's not the case and we're kind of reprioritizing, just want to understand that part a little bit.
As in thinking about the like priorities established at the beginning of the year.
Yeah, so like for example, like the rapid response team is something that we've been working on, and I know like, you know, there's recommendations that the team has worked on already and everything. And I guess I'm just, you know, in my mind, that's an initiative that already has a high priority and we're continuing it. And then we're just kind of like adding on the priorities for the rest of the year. But if it's more like, you know, that's getting bumped lower on the priority list and we're moving other things on top of that, that's kind of what I'm trying to understand.
I see. This is like, I think sort of a housekeeping discussion to be like, there are quite a lot of ideas floating out there, and also a little bit like what Tia was saying, having some continuity or acknowledgement that a lot of times we do say, you know, we have these ideas 6 months ago, so where are we on those? If we haven't started them, do we plan to pick them up? You know, the RRT, for example, was not on that list, but that's an emergent issue of clearly community and committee concern. So that seems like that's a good example. That's an obvious one that does seem like it will rise to the level of substantial committee work. Everyone mentioned that, or nearly everyone mentioned that. So, but if, you know, if we're saying, okay, it looks like we could do 2 to 3 recommendations, 2 to 3 community engagement events, and then we have these other ongoing things that PCCEP established a while back, where are we with those? Are we still interested in pursuing them? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think that makes more sense. Because I'm as I'm like seeing the list, I'm like, well, aren't we already working on the RRT? Aren't we already working on codification? You know, like that's kind of where my question came from.
Yeah, and you're totally right. And this is just a little bit of like an alignment to both be like, hey, we do have a lot going on, and like, so bringing it all together in some senses. Yeah, so I understand the confusion there.
Thank you.
Kip?
Yeah, to reiterate where I think this is a good exercise to review what we initially thought we wanted to work on, look at where we're at now, and discuss reprioritization based on things change rapidly, even though government moves slowly. So weird dichotomy. Yeah, I think this is a useful conversation to have. And I do want what I put in the chat was really just I want to make sure my understanding is still the right focus based on the conversations we had, including several that I've had with Jared and conversations we've had in Judge Simon's court. Is that our primary focus, we're not constrained to it, but goes along the lines of reduction of harm and constitutionality of interactions. And even I'm getting back to the houselessness or the ability to sleep argument, is that even if the Supreme Court says that there's no basic human right for somebody to sleep, even if there's no shelter bed or a place for somebody to go, which I have great issue with, that the outcomes of interactions with police still need to be those that do not end up in grievous harm or worse. So I feel like with the convergence of a lot of, I'd argue, regressive policies that have just been moving forward quickly the last couple months, those are a really good place for us to focus, at least in the second half of this year, which means maybe deprioritizing some of the things we originally thought we were going to do. That's all I wanted to say there.
Carrie?
I think if we're talking about the fact that it's July and we're halfway through the year, and as much as there's lots of topics, I think that the rapid response team is going to be a topic that we're going to be wanting to respond to, unfortunately, just due to the fact that it's an election year and there's lots of other things going on with protests, and maybe we should be prepared for that as our main topic while we're also focusing on codification and stops data. My other pipe dream thought bubble idea is that if we were to look at our topics, if we were to have an amazing intern, for example, who could compare the training of PPB to other cities on topics like brain injury or indigenous or other topics we've covered, and then also look at the stops data and compare it, that might be one way of just keeping a follow-up pulse point. It wouldn't be something I don't think our committee would be able to handle, like all that statistical work and make it ready for publishing. But if there was an amazing miracle intern available or something, that might be a way we could do that.
The city has a pretty awesome one that shared some data with us previously.
Yeah, if we could be the clearinghouse for that, like here we are, you know, following up on the topics that we said the community was interested in, and we're keeping track of it for you.
Ashley, you can go ahead of me because it's kind of just like a sub point. So yeah.
Well, so, you know, since we're talking about the rep response, well, actually backing up, like so I guess I'm just trying to, yeah, I think as we walk through these, like, what is practical? So I hear you, Kip. I know we have like this, you know, wide umbrella essentially to engage the community. I just like, I'm still, I don't know if concern is the right word, but I'm just wanting to, I think it's what are we going to do with these topics? So for example, the houselessness and the Supreme Court decision and all that, like what can PCCEP do in that with that? You know, that's a legislative situation. That's where, you know, we as constituents and keep on top of our city council and say, don't change, you know, don't be advocating, don't be lobbying for changes. So like, it's just like, it kind of feels separate where I'm like, so is our job at PCCEP to like, first, would we gather a panel and we would have a forum and then that like, is
No,
our,
no, no. I'll just jump in on this one.
Yeah.
Not to put my thumb on the scale for any issue. It's just, I think the way, I think you're right to think about, you know, PCCEP's work is directed more towards how communities are impacted by things. And that one, I think the way you would look at it would not be like likely. Well, I mean, maybe you could, but I think the traditional way would not be for PCCEP to look at like lobbying a legislative body, but and maybe you could, I don't know, that would be new. But would be more like, okay, if this happens and PCCEP or other community, our audience would foresee or be concerned about the impact that might have on you know, the houseless community in this case, an impacted community, what recommendations or work would you want to do around that subject to improve outcomes is how I think PCCEP would think about an issue like that. Not to necessarily go to the root cause of it, but the impact on community.
okay.
Does that make
Yeah.
sense? Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean,
Anyone else who weighed in on that, feel free to share your initial ideas around it too. That would be my understanding of broadly what like that sort of issue would look like for PCCEP.
Yeah, I could also see this like having an influence on Portland street response. And what potentially what they can and can't do. And so kind of like that's something we've already worked on. I don't know what's gonna happen, but that's just another avenue.
Yeah, I guess I just still ask the question, you know, where does PCCEP roll? So I get it, the outcomes to the community, but for example, the brain injury forum, right? That was a lot of work. And I think the outcome was that there was a seed planted, there was information brought to the table, but that felt like a lot of energy by like one or two people on committee. So how are we going to move forward with any of these topics in a real thoughtful, mindful way where we really are doing the due diligence to think of the outcome that will help on the community? I think it was said in the comments. So the more we bring, so we have another forum on the RRT. And so we come and we allow people to traumatize themselves again by telling the stories that we've heard over and over again from 2020 and before. And then what are we doing with that information? You know, what are we taking and how are we being mindful of the labor we were taking from the community to talk about those topics? I think brain injury, that was a really impactful panel. So yeah, now we are on the hook to do something with that information. So it's like, I think if we take a topic that's passionate and powerful to the work we're doing, like we just really need to be thoughtful about like making sure we're not just, you know, saying this is what we're going to do, like, you know, and I think we've done a really good job in the last year of really like honing in and taking certain topics and focusing on them. But sometimes I just worry that we're taking like, and I know I'm going to get comments for this, but like we're taking the sensational stuff and we're moving it forward, but then what is the real impact for the community besides having to come in and talk about the trauma again? Like I don't want to get into that habit. And I think we've talked about that many times in this space. So I just, you know, how does that actually work out? What can PCCEP do with any of these topics, especially like the houselessness, the stuff that like really is outside of our realm? It is a topic that's under policing, it can be, but it's what action can PCCEP be doing that will come out that have those outcomes for the community besides, again, traumatizing them with their stories or telling their stories again. But that's just my perspective, my opinion.
Does anyone have a response?
Sort of. I mean, like I totally agree with you. Like if we're not creating meaningful, impactful like change and just like having this be a process where we hear people and don't move the needle, then like that is harmful, right? And like, but I think you could also like argue that for anything that has to do with the work of our committee, that like a lot of these things are inherently traumatic for folks, and like for community members to have to hear and talk about their experiences. But I think that like I think it's like I don't have the answers at all of like what we should do, but just that like I think your questions just lend them to like the answer that like anything we do has to be like really, really intentional and not just like this is important, so we're gonna talk about it. And I think like that's if we knew what we would do, then this would be a lot easier, right? But and like sometimes in some cases, like for Portland Street Response, it was a thing that needed support and we were like support it, right? But this is like it's not like as linear as that, which I think is making it really hard for me to wrap my head around. So I'm kind of with you and I hope we can find something, but yeah, that was kind of a non-answer, but
No, that was really great, Odelia. And I want to hear everyone's comments and maybe responses to this, but maybe I failed to frame this exercise appropriately because this is a very initial, like a high level initial conversation. I don't think anyone should expect themselves to have a perfect view of exactly where PCCEP would go with any of these issues. And yes, I think in terms of prioritization, it's important to think about what is actionable. That's always like a really, really good thing to keep in mind. Carrie?
Thank you. Yeah, a lot's been said, and I think it's all been great. You know, going back to what Dory said about the impact on the community, and going back to Ashley, your many points about the importance of staying on actionable items. Totally agree and love that we're talking about that. I do think with the rapid response team, the community engagement and understanding the impact of what they expect out of protest responses, or community crisis responses is going to be very informative. And I think that's a role we could really play, and it would be actionable eventually into some sort of recommendation. Maybe if we had the foresight that we did with the PSR recommendation, where we had 6 great points, and we could then assign our agenda and get the feedback that we wanted from the beginning, it would be really great. But it's hard to be the magic crystal ball for foreseers. But I think we did a really good job with that, and it's a great example to try to hope we can follow.
Leslie?
I think basically what I was going to say kind of has already been said. I was just going to echo, I think, what Adelia said a little bit about, like, sometimes that we do have to act like very quickly, but I do appreciate, the thought process of, like, are we just reacting, or are we actually moving something forward? I don't know. I think that honestly, I don't know if that should be like, I don't know how we can make that into a procedure where we're like, is this just a new shiny thing, or is this actually something that we can move forward on? How they have the decision tree or something like that. But that way it keeps us focused on the bigger picture while still being able to react to the things that do come up that are urgent.
Totally agree. Kip?
Yeah, I maybe I don't have as much to add as I thought I did. Yeah, I think we need to be reflexive to what's happening and concerns of the community. And I know in the circles that I'm involved in, there's a lot of concern with, again, the rapid changes over the last few months. So, but I think that's part of the conversation we need to have, is we understand that there is inequity in policing still. That's why the consent decree has not been lifted yet. And we know that we have a recent history of different interactions that have not worked out well. So I think it's incumbent upon us to at least have the discussions on whether there's something actionable from our perspective that we should focus on. And if we think as a committee there is, again, identify people who are available to work on it, do a working group. Thank you, Adelia, on RRT, and do some research and bring it back and have that discussion. And if it turns out with a consultation with like Jared or somebody who is like, yeah, no, we don't think that's going to fly, or from Stephanie's perspective saying that we don't have influence over that because this falls under this thing here, then that's a different story. But I think it's worth having the conversations about.
Tia?
I was just thinking about how I feel like most of our goals with PCCEP is improving the police department and interactions with and people in the community's interactions with police. Like we were talking about the indigenous population, houselessness, brain injury community, as well as the protesters. And when we're working towards improving the police department's interactions with police, how can we really move forward with that? Is it really take a big event, or is it more having conversations and meetings with the training division or meeting with TAC or the BHU? How can we coordinate efforts and really help make a difference with how police interact with all of these different groups? And I'm also thinking about an email that we got from one of our presenters, Dave Cracky, on how he can help us in doing some great actionable items in the community around policing and the brain injured, and how we've connected with Brain Injury Connections, as well as one of our lived experiences speakers, and how can we move forward with them. And some of the items that we were talking about were attainable, I think, and actionable, but would be like working with the training division. So how could we make, and I have those connections. I'm just wondering how can we move forward when people are inviting themselves to help us move forward with different topics and getting back to people who offer their services.
Thanks, Tia. Stephanie?
I don't want to take up too much time because this has been a really awesome conversation, and all of the perspectives are just, I'm so appreciative of everything and all of the ways that you are all thinking about these important issues. One thing I was just going to offer just for you all to consider is when I'm hearing this from different people, and everything I'm hearing kind of say if PCCEP wanted to, you know, focus on the RRT redevelopment. So what does that mean? That means what does the training look like, right? What is, how are they engaging with people in a protest or not? Or how can we engage with that team proactively, right? There's lots of different kinds of options there for you all to consider. But what I really wanted to highlight and underscore something Carrie said, and others have said it as well. But that was, you know, trying to, whatever topic you choose, really trying to learn more about what is the best practice to give yourselves a yardstick, right? And learning about how you can understand those in order to make those actionable recommendations. I think that is a really powerful approach to any of the topics that you choose to take. And, you know, again, as Kip has been saying, the settlement agreement is always going to be a guiding light in terms of topics. There's no shortage of topics that PCCEP unquestionably has the ability to inform and help shape. And so that, you know, any understanding there are lots and lots of really important things. I think if whatever topic you all decide to elevate right now, I think there are lots of good ways that we could try to find to help get you information, to connect you with people, to get information about, you know, what things, you know, what are the best practices, or what are, you know, how things are done in other places for you to understand and compare what's happening here. I just want to make sure that you know that, you know, I know Dory is amazing at supporting everybody, and I also will be happy to try to find any resources I can to help get you information that can help inform how you learn about and make recommendations for any of the topics that you decide to forward.
Thanks, Stephanie. And yeah, I think that's a great reminder for something like RRT. Yeah, similar to like the extensive work that committee members did to learn about Portland street response and the way that city systems kind of encompassed all of that. And, you know, I think there would be a whole lot of research that would go into work on something like that. And, you know, there have been some initial meetings, but that would certainly be quite an involved topic. Yeah, so that's a great reminder. Any other PCCEP comments right now? Odelia?
Yeah, this is not really about like prioritization, but just, I think like as committee co-chairs, we can kind of communicate and plan more to like align these things. Cause sometimes in the past, it's just like what each co-chair is interested in, and that's really important. And like there are ways to strategize so that these processes happen like most effectively. So yeah, that's just something like maybe the co-chairs could meet once in a while, or I don't know, but just an idea.
You mean like, because the co-chairs meet, I just want everyone to know, our co-chairs do meet. But you mean like.
Sorry.
Like
I
a
mean, like all together.
Okay, yeah. I like that.
Like align our agendas.
Gotcha.
Yeah, we do meet. Yeah, that's true.
Great. Yeah, that's a great suggestion, Odelia. And just circling back to something Ashley mentioned, maybe someone else too, but yeah, I do think we're about due for another retreat to sort of iron out some process things and check in with like new stuff that has come up, and I think that would be great too. Okay, so I'm just to summarize kind of what has come up so far, and we do have time for some final piece of discussion, and then we'll do open public comment. But so what has emerged from this sort of initial discussion is an interest in continuing the focus on the rapid response team work. There's also a good bit of discussion about the police interactions with the houseless community, given recent legislative developments around that. So that could be something to pursue. And then the other emergent one that a number of people mentioned was kind of seeing the codification process through. And that definitely will take up some time as well. So those are a lot of, I mean, that's a substantial amount of stuff for sure. I did want to ask, there were two ongoing priorities that you established back in December 2023 that I wanted to check in on, if you wanted to keep them sort of on the docket. Oh, I guess one of them you did mention, which was the monitor relationship. I think that's in process. And then the other one is the future accountability board, which was priority level 1, and that did not come up. So I wanted to check in with you on that and see where the committee interest lies with that previous priority.
Yeah, I think that is still pretty crucial. I'm looking forward to Monday to get a better idea of the changes, and then I think I could, and also like what we can and can't do around that. I still feel like a little uncertain about, just because we were waiting and then we were going to talk to Jared. So from what I remember, like months ago, but
we did reach out to Jared, like we did
Yeah.
ask, and I don't, I know things happen, but he did kind of ghost us. So I don't know.
Yeah.
You may have asked about it while it was still under review.
Right.
And the
Yeah.
situation has changed, so I don't know.
Okay. So maybe we
Yeah,
can.
it was. So maybe we can follow up. But I do think it is still really important, because I haven't like read through everything, but there were some changes that are important to discuss. So yeah, that's where I'm at with it.
Okay. So we'll keep that kind of. Yeah, I'm just kind of taking my mental notes about priorities. We that kind of emerged or bubbled up to the top here. Great. Any final thoughts, questions about this discussion? And this is, just our first discussion about this.
I guess I'll ask, was the whole activity to prioritize level three or and what is the emergent topics at this point? Where are we at with the emergent topics? And was it just prioritizing tonight?
The way I laid out the slides was checking in on the previous priorities that PCCEP established, and then the emergent topics slide was ideas that have come up since then. So this discussion was around all of those ideas on all of those slides. And based on what you all have said so far, I will now organize what I've heard into my understanding of, you know, the most people mentioned X. So that's probably priority level 1, right? And so on. And then I'll send that back to you, see how you feel about it. And it's not really that formal, like it kind of just shakes out like, you know, the priority 1 things are things that we'll probably spend future meetings on. But then the other things kind of work their way in. Sort of how it works. Does that make sense?
Yes. Will you follow up with us at like a full board meeting or one of the next community engagement meetings or a retreat?
I will initially send these things to you via email. And then we'll have to figure out when we talk about it next in a meeting. Not sure what August looks like quite yet.
Okay, thank you.
All right, folks, are we ready to move to open public comment or hear community input? Great. Dr. Allen?
Hi. I heard several people mention stops data. I want to remind people that stops data is in existence because a police officer looked at a person they were about to give a ticket to and decided what racial group. They have a number of racial groups like Black, Hispanic, Indigenous, white. They have more than that. And they decide, they don't ask the person, they decide what the person in front of them is. There's no feedback on the accuracy of this. I just want to remind everybody that that's how stops data comes to exist.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. Go ahead, Fern.
I am going to try to make this short. I appreciated hearing all the conversations this evening. One of the purposes that we raised about brain injury and the work that people do, not just on this committee, but the people that are seen before PCCEP for any kind of help and relief. Brain injury is ADA, and there's a lot of regulations that go along the ADA. And brain injury is a disability that there's a lot of other disabilities that are as invisible as is brain injury. And so I am an advocate for the brain injury. I am an advocate for people learning what they don't know, because once you know, at least you have some sort of a semblance of an understanding. And there's not a bell ring. And all of the squares of what you all are operating on and that sort of thing really should run parallel when you work with people of color, any kind of other underserved organization, communities, whether it be people with disabilities, whether it be the Indigenous, the English second language, etc. So I think that as you continue to explore all of this, please take a look at not just the squares, but also all of those avenues that go through those squares and into other arenas, both in people, in laws, and in practices. I think I've kind of shot my wad. Thank you.
Thanks, Vern. Any other comments? All right. Any responses or questions to anything shared in public comment or final thoughts? Okay.
No,
Do you have something, Tia?
no, I see Fern raising her hand.
Yeah. I just want to thank you all for the work, the volunteer work that you're doing, the work with the city that you're doing. It's a requirement, and based upon the conditions in which everybody's working, I just commend you for stepping forward and helping Portland get things right when it comes with law enforcement. And I think that is the short end of my long-winded conversation. I'm done.
Thanks, Fern.
Mhm.
All right, folks. Well, I will.
Okay.
Yep, and yep, some good reminders in the chat here. Just because we don't have this on our what's next slide, there is that community meeting on July 15th. That's next Monday. I believe that's hybrid. Yeah, Stephanie.
It is hybrid, but we have a large room at the Portland building. If anybody wants to come in person, we welcome that. But there will be a Zoom link as well. And it will be recorded and posted as soon as possible.
Great. I will be there. PCCEP, I think for those of you interested in this issue area, I think that's a really great event to attend. So yeah, and then I'll hand it back to the co-chairs for any final comments, thoughts.
Okay, sure. Next steps is the, next. What's next is my section. Do we have the what's next sign? We did open. So, but I'd like to talk about what's next, and thank you everyone for your time again tonight. Thanks so much for coming to Community Engagement Subcommittee. Hope we see you at the next Community Engagement Subcommittee, but our next meeting is July 17th, the full committee meeting at 6 o'clock to 8:30. We hope to see you there, where we'll probably have a great agenda as well. Thank you so much for, let's see, what time is it? How are we doing on time? Am I saying goodbye yet?
Doing great on time, which we
Oh.
love for a summer night.
Thank you everyone.
Yeah, thank you all so much. Thank you to our co-chairs, Odelia and Tia.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care,
Thanks,
everyone.
everybody.
Enjoy the rest of your night. See you
Okay,
next time.
thank you. Good night.
Bye.